The galaxy was a vast place, filled with countless species. Among them, the Vraxians stood out as one of the most powerful. Their fleet was feared by all, and their ships were unmatched in size and strength. They had conquered many worlds, expanding their empire without mercy. They believed themselves to be unstoppable. And yet, in their arrogance, they made a mistake that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. It all began when the Vraxians decided to target Earth. They had heard of humanity's recent rise, its advances in space travel, and its growing influence in the galaxy. But to the Vraxians, humans were nothing more than an annoyance, a weak young species that had no place in the vast galaxy. They saw the humans as no threat and decided to strike before Earth could become a real problem. They believed it would be an easy victory, just another conquest for their empire. Admiral Korak stood in the command center of the Vraxian flagship, overlooking the stars. His mind was already thinking about the glory of their upcoming victory. "We will crush them, just like we have done with every other species," he said, his voice filled with cold confidence. The Vraxians sent out a warning to humanity, demanding they surrender their planet to their rule. It was a simple message: submit or face destruction. They expected the humans to bow down and submit, just as every other species had done before them. But the humans didn't respond as the Vraxians had expected. Instead of cowering in fear, humanity's leaders sent back a message of their own. "We will not surrender. We will fight to the end." The message was short but powerful. It was a declaration of defiance. Admiral Korak laughed when he saw the message. "Foolish humans," he muttered. "They don't even know what they're up against." But the Vraxians didn't know just how wrong they were. The first human ships appeared in the distance, their engines humming with energy. These ships were small compared to the Vraxian fleet, but they were fast and agile. The Vraxians didn't take them seriously at first. Their ships were powerful, equipped with advanced weapons and shields. They believed that no matter how fast the humans were, they would never be able to stand up to the might of the Vraxian fleet. The first wave of human ships attacked. It was a small strike, but it was enough to show the Vraxians that these humans were not as weak as they thought. The human ships moved with incredible speed, dodging the Vraxian lasers and returning fire with precision. Admiral Korak was surprised. He hadn't expected this level of resistance. "What is this?" he barked. "How are they able to move so quickly?" But before he could give orders to regroup, another wave of human ships appeared, this time even larger than the first. They weren't just attacking randomly. They were using tactics, coordinating their attacks in ways the Vraxians had never seen before. The humans were not just fighting. They were fighting smart. Still, Admiral Korak refused to believe that they were in danger. "It's just a small inconvenience. We'll crush them soon," he said, trying to calm himself. But deep down, he felt a sense of unease that he couldn't ignore. As the battle raged on, the Vraxians realized that they had underestimated their enemy. The humans fought with a fierceness that was unlike anything the Vraxians had ever faced. The humans didn't just fight to survive. They fought to protect their home. And that was a force the Vraxians couldn't predict. Admiral Korak tried to rally his fleet, but the humans were everywhere. They were like ghosts in the darkness of space, striking from unexpected angles and disappearing before the Vraxians could respond. The Vraxian ships were powerful, but they were not built for this kind of guerrilla warfare. The Vraxians' superior numbers and firepower didn't guarantee victory. They were not used to an enemy that would not back down. The humans had no choice but to fight, and they fought with everything they had. The Vraxians began to realize that their plan to crush humanity might not work after all. But it was too late to back down now. They had already fired the first shot, and they couldn't afford to retreat. The Vraxian fleet began to suffer casualties. Their shields were breached, their ships were destroyed, and their morale began to crack. Admiral Korak could feel the shift. The confidence he had once felt was now replaced with doubt. He had made a critical mistake. He had thought that humanity would bow to their power, but instead, They had come out swinging. And now, the Vraxians were beginning to feel the true power of humanity's resolve. It was a force they could not easily defeat. As the battle continued, Admiral Korak began to realize that the humans were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for something more. They were fighting for their future, for their home, and for the freedom they held so dearly. And that was something the Vraxians could never take away. The warning that the Vraxians had ignored was becoming all too clear. Humanity was not a species to be underestimated. And soon, the Vraxians would find out just how dangerous a species they had provoked. The battle between the Vraxians and humanity had only just begun, and already it was clear that this would not be the easy victory the Vraxians had anticipated. What began as a calculated attack soon turned into a desperate struggle. Admiral Korak, standing at the helm of his flagship, clenched his fists as he watched the damage reports flood in. Humanity had far surpassed his expectations. "We underestimated them," Korak muttered, pacing back and forth. His once unshakable confidence was now crumbling. The humans had proven to be far more resilient and resourceful than they had ever imagined. The Vraxians, used to dominating their enemies with overwhelming power, were now forced to adapt. Their ships, large and heavily armed, were not designed for this kind of warfare. Humanity's ships, although smaller, were fast and agile. The humans had adapted quickly, striking with precision and disappearing before the Vraxians could retaliate. It was the kind of attack that disrupted the enemy's rhythm and left them guessing. As the battle intensified, the Vraxians found themselves scrambling to reorganize. They had suffered significant losses, and their commanders began to question the wisdom of their attack on Earth. But there was no turning back now. Admiral Korak's pride was at stake. He refused to admit defeat. "Do not let them break our lines," he ordered fiercely. "We must crush them before they get too bold." But the humans were relentless. They had no intention of backing down. The Vraxians had opened a door, and humanity was determined to make them regret it. Back on Earth, humanity's leaders watched as their ships fought the Vraxians in space. They had been preparing for this moment for years, and now they were finally seeing the fruits of their labor. They had no choice but to fight. The Vraxians had declared war, and there was no room for hesitation. They had to defend their planet, and they would not let the enemy take it easily. General Avery Lawson, one of humanity's top military strategists, sat in the command center, reviewing the status of their forces. The humans had managed to push the Vraxians back in a few key areas, but the enemy was still powerful. The odds were still against them, but General Lawson's face was calm. He knew that humanity had something the Vraxians lacked: unity and an unbreakable will. "We can do this," Lawson said to his officers. "Keep pressing them. Don't let up. We are fighting for our home." Meanwhile, in the heart of the Vraxian fleet, Admiral Korak was beginning to feel the pressure. His fleet, once the most formidable in the galaxy, was now in disarray. His ships had been damaged, and his forces were no longer the unified force they had been. The humans, with their superior tactics and relentless attacks, had begun to break through the cracks in the Vraxian armor. "This isn't possible," Korak said, his voice trembling with disbelief. "How can they do this? How can they fight like this?" The Vraxians were used to opponents who crumbled under pressure, species that feared their might and surrendered at the first sign of danger. But humans were different. They did not fear death. They feared the loss of their planet, their way of life, and that was what gave them strength. Korak's frustration turned to anger. "Prepare to send reinforcements," he barked, slamming his fist against the control panel. "We will crush them, no matter the cost." But the more the Vraxians fought, the more they realized that the humans had anticipated every move they made. The humans had studied the Vraxians' tactics, their weaknesses, and their patterns. The Vraxians had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt. They thought they could easily crush this young species, but now they were caught in the trap of their own arrogance. As the days passed, the conflict raged on. The humans launched counterattacks from every direction, wearing down the Vraxians piece by piece. They hit supply lines, destroyed communication hubs, and even infiltrated Vraxian vessels, striking from within. The Vraxians were losing control, and they couldn't understand why. Admiral Korek's pride was shattered. His fleet, once considered invincible, was crumbling. The humans had turned the tide of battle, and it seemed like nothing the Vraxians did could stop them. The Vraxians had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. It wasn't just the military strategies that were working against them. The Vraxians didn't understand the human spirit. They didn't know that humanity had been forged in the fires of struggle. Every setback, every challenge they faced, only made them fight harder. The Vraxians were fighting for dominance, but the humans were fighting for survival. And that made all the difference. As Admiral Korek stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the battle unfold, he realized that the humans had something that his species could never match: resilience. No matter how many ships the Vraxians destroyed, the humans would keep coming. No matter how many battles they lost, they would never surrender. It was at that moment that Korek truly understood the gravity of the situation. They had provoked something they couldn't control. The galaxy was on the edge of something far bigger than they had ever anticipated, and humanity's response to their challenge would echo across the stars for centuries to come. The Vraxians had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And now, they would face the consequences. The war had only just begun, and it was going to change everything. The Vraxians were starting to panic. For the first time, they were up against an enemy that refused to yield. Their ships were being systematically destroyed, and their fleets were being scattered. Admiral Korek paced the command deck of his flagship, frustration boiling within him. The once feared Vraxian fleet was now losing its grip, and the humans were exploiting every weakness they had. "It's impossible," Korek muttered under his breath. His hands trembled slightly as he looked at the status reports flashing across the screens in front of him. He had been confident in his victory. The Vraxians were a species of incredible power, known for conquering planets with ease. But humanity was different. They didn't buckle under pressure. They adapted and fought back, harder and smarter than any species the Vraxians had encountered. The Vraxians had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity's ability to survive, to fight, and to defend their home at all costs. It was clear that they had miscalculated, and now humanity was pushing them back with a force they had never seen before. On Earth, the military command centers were alive with activity. Generals and strategists worked tirelessly, analyzing every move the Vraxians made and countering them with precision. Humans, despite their technological limitations, had developed strategies that the Vraxians couldn't predict. General Avery Lawson stood at the center of the operations room, watching the battle unfold on the large holographic display. His face was stoic, but his eyes burned with a fierce determination. Humanity had been forced into a war they never wanted, and now they would show the galaxy just how powerful they were. "We need to keep pushing," General Lawson said to his officers. "The Vraxians are rattled. We've hit them hard, and they're starting to crack. Now it's time to finish this." The humans had learned quickly. They had mastered the art of hit-and-run tactics, striking at weak points and retreating before the enemy could respond. The Vraxians had always relied on their superior numbers, but humanity had something more valuable: ingenuity. One by one, the Vraxian ships began to fall. Each battle left the Vraxians more vulnerable, their morale shattered. It was clear they were losing the war, but Admiral Korek refused to give in. He refused to acknowledge that he had misjudged humanity. The Vraxians had attacked with the belief that Earth would fall without a fight. Now, the Vraxians were learning the hard way that humanity's resilience could not be broken. Desperate, Admiral Korek sent out a communication to his generals. "We need more ships, more soldiers," he barked. "We cannot allow them to push us out of our sector. Reinforcements are on the way, but we must hold our ground until they arrive." But even as Korek issued his orders, He couldn't shake the nagging feeling that humanity had already turned the tide. The humans had begun to take the offensive, coordinating attacks that struck at the Vraxian fleet's heart. And with each successful strike, the Vraxians found it harder to recover. On Earth, the human soldiers knew they were fighting a battle for their very survival. They had no choice but to keep going, to keep fighting. There was no room for hesitation, no space for fear. The human spirit, forged through centuries of hardship and perseverance, had come alive in the face of this new enemy. "We won't stop until they're gone," General Lawson declared. "They thought they could destroy us, but they've only awakened a sleeping giant." Back in space, the Vraxian ships were now scattered, trying to regroup. The once proud fleet was now a disorganized mess of ships, struggling to stay together. The Vraxians had underestimated the humans' capacity for organized warfare, and now they were paying the price. On his flagship, Admiral Korak stood silently, staring out at the chaos unfolding before him. He had never imagined this would happen. The humans had fought back in ways he couldn't have predicted. Every strategy the Vraxians tried seemed to fall apart under humanity's pressure. "They're not just fighting back," Korak whispered, realization dawning on him. "They're fighting for something. Something we can't understand." Humanity wasn't just fighting to survive. They were fighting for their home, their families, their future. The Vraxians had attacked with the hope of conquering Earth, but now they were fighting to hold on to their own fleet. Every time they thought they had gained ground, the humans would strike again, pushing them back with relentless fury. The Vraxians were beginning to crack, and humanity's resolve only grew stronger. The humans had proven that no one could break them, not even the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And as the battle continued, it became clearer that the Vraxians had made a grave mistake by attacking Earth. Admiral Korak's once unshakable confidence had turned to dread. He could see the writing on the wall. The Vraxians might have the technology, but humanity had the heart and the drive to defend what was theirs. And the Vraxians were beginning to understand that this was a fight they would never win. Admiral Korak sat in his command chair, his mind racing as he watched the human forces tear through his fleet. The screen in front of him displayed the latest reports, showing a loss of more ships, more territory, and more personnel. The Vraxians were failing, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "They're relentless," Korak muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. "How are they doing this?" For the first time since the war began, he felt fear, a deep, gnawing fear. The humans had proven themselves more than capable. They had struck back harder than anyone could have imagined. What was once a minor conflict, easily dismissed by the Vraxians, had turned into a full-scale war that threatened to tear apart everything they had built. General Avery Lawson was standing in the operations room back on Earth, staring at a live feed of the battlefield. His team had been working around the clock, analyzing every possible move the Vraxians could make. They had adapted and countered their enemy at every turn, using the Vraxians' own tactics against them. The humans had become the predators, and the Vraxians were now the prey. "We've hit them hard, but we need to keep pushing," Lawson said, his voice steady but urgent. "We can't let up now. They're weakening. This is our chance." The human fleet, once disorganized and overwhelmed, had become a well-oiled machine. Their ships were smaller but faster, better equipped to hit fast and retreat before the Vraxians could respond. Every Vraxian ship they destroyed only fueled their determination. The humans were no longer fighting a defensive war. They were taking the battle straight to the heart of the Vraxian Empire. But the Vraxians weren't completely out of options. Despite their losses, Korak knew they still had the resources to launch one final counterattack. One massive assault that could turn the tide in their favor. He had to act quickly, before the humans could completely disrupt their command structure. "We need reinforcements," Korak growled, his hand slamming down on the armrests of his chair. "Bring in the fleet from Vraxia Prime. We're not losing this." The message was sent, and soon, reinforcements from the heart of the Vraxian Empire began to approach. Thousands of ships, each one more powerful than anything the humans had faced so far, moved toward the front lines. General Lawson watched the reinforcements appear on the radar. His face hardened. This was the moment. The humans had proven their strength, but now they had to prove their resolve. "They're bringing in everything they've got," Lawson said to his commanders. "This is going to be the biggest fight yet. We need to push them back, or everything we've done will be for nothing." The atmosphere was tense. For the first time, the human forces were facing the Vraxians at full strength. The war had escalated into a full-blown battle for dominance in the galaxy. Humanity wasn't going to back down, but the Vraxians had learned from their earlier mistakes. They weren't underestimating the humans this time. They were ready for the human ingenuity, the tactical brilliance that had turned the tide in the humans' favor. As the two fleets collided, the battlefield erupted into chaos. Ships exploded, laser fire cut through the void, and debris filled the air like deadly confetti. The humans fought with a fury the Vraxians hadn't anticipated. Every move was calculated, every action purposeful. Yet, despite their bravery, the humans were outnumbered. Korak's reinforcements gave the Vraxians an overwhelming advantage. General Lawson's face remained calm as he issued orders, but inside, he knew that this was the moment that would determine the fate of humanity. "This is it," he whispered to his team. "We can win this, but we have to give everything we have." The humans fought with everything they had, but the Vraxians were relentless. The battle raged on, neither side willing to give an inch. But amidst the chaos, General Lawson had one final trick up his sleeve. He'd been planning a secret weapon for this very moment, a desperate move, one that could turn the tide once and for all. Humanity's ingenuity had made them the underdogs of the galaxy, but in this final confrontation, they would show the Vraxians just how dangerous they truly were. As the battle reached its peak, General Lawson gave the order: "Execute the counteroffensive." The human ships, which had been retreating, suddenly pivoted. They made a calculated move, launching a massive attack on the Vraxian command ship. The sudden shift threw the Vraxians off guard. In a desperate attempt to regain control, the Vraxians fired everything they had, but the humans were faster, smarter, and ready. One by one, the Vraxian ships fell. Their once great fleet was crumbling under the weight of humanity's fierce resistance. Admiral Korak watched in disbelief as the tide turned, knowing that the Vraxians had been bested. The humans had done it. They had made the Vraxians pay for their arrogance. Now, the Vraxians would have to face the consequences. Humanity's revenge had begun. The galaxy had never seen a battle like this before. Humanity, once considered weak and unimportant in the grand scheme of galactic politics, had suddenly turned the tide. What had started as a series of small victories had grown into a full-scale war. And now, the humans were on the offensive. But Admiral Korak could feel the weight of impending doom pressing down on him. His fleet was in shambles, and the once mighty Vraxian war machine was crumbling. For every Vraxian ship that fell, more human ships rose from the depths of the void, determined to finish what they had started. The balance of power was tipping, and for the first time in his life, Korak knew the Vraxians were losing. His thoughts were interrupted by a blaring alarm. A message from Vraxia Prime, the heart of their empire, flashed on the screen before him. "Admiral Korak." The voice of Empress Talia echoed from the comms. "We have received intelligence reports from our spies. The humans have located our final defense systems, and they are preparing to launch their ultimate attack." Korak's heart sank. The Vraxians had invested everything into their final line of defense, the Vraxian fleet command that was stationed around Vraxia Prime. It was their last hope to win the war. If humanity had discovered its location and was preparing to attack, there was little time left. "Are our forces ready?" Korak asked, already knowing the answer. "Not nearly enough." Empress Talia's voice cracked with frustration. "The fleet is too scattered. The human counteroffensive is faster than anticipated. I fear that we are already too late." Korak slammed his fist on the control panel. "Damn it. How did we let this happen? The Vraxians had underestimated humanity in every possible way. They thought that a race with only a few hundred years of spacefaring history could never challenge the might of a galactic empire that had existed for millennia. They believed that humanity's unpredictable nature would be their downfall, never suspecting that it was exactly what would make them unstoppable. On Earth, General Lawson and his commanders were already preparing for the final assault. After the Vraxian fleet had been pushed back, it was clear that the humans had one final opportunity to strike the death blow. Their target, Vraxia Prime, the heart of the Vraxian Empire. "We've made it this far, and we're not turning back now," Lawson said to his team. "The Vraxians are down, but not out. We hit them where it hurts, and we finish this once and for all." The humans had suffered losses of their own. Many brave soldiers and officers had fallen in battle, but the drive to win, to finally take down the empire that had plagued them, had strengthened their resolve. The fear they once felt was now gone, replaced by the certainty that the Vraxians could be defeated. But the final battle would not be easy. The Vraxians were preparing for their last stand, and the atmosphere around Vraxia Prime was tense with the promise of destruction. The Vraxian fleet had regrouped, now reinforced with the remnants of their scattered forces, all determined to protect their homeworld at any cost. As the human fleet approached Vraxia Prime, Lawson's voice crackled over the comms. "This is it. We hit hard, hit fast, and leave nothing behind. We end this today." In the cold void of space, two colossal fleets met, their weapons blazing. The battle raged, ships exploding and debris flying everywhere. For every Vraxian ship that fell, the humans pressed on. They had learned from every battle, adapted, and improved. The Vraxians could no longer match the speed and precision of the human forces. Admiral Korak watched as the situation worsened. His fleet was scattered, and even the best ships in the Vraxian arsenal were no match for humanity's relentless assault. His heart pounded in his chest, knowing that he could not stop the inevitable. Vraxia Prime, once a symbol of their empire's power, was now on the brink of destruction. Then, just as Korak was preparing for the worst, he received a message from Empress Talia. Her voice, barely a whisper, broke through the chaos. "Admiral, it's over. We're abandoning Vraxia Prime. There's no more hope." The words hit Korak like a physical blow. He had failed. The Vraxians, once the dominant force in the galaxy, had been bested by humanity. In a matter of months, the human forces had turned the tide of war, bringing the galaxy to its knees. The Vraxian Empire was crumbling. With Vraxia Prime now vulnerable, General Lawson and his fleet struck the final blow. In a moment of stunning precision, humanity destroyed the last line of defense, and Vraxia Prime was left in ruins. The humans had won. The Vraxians had underestimated humanity. They thought they could crush them. Now, they were left to face the consequences of their arrogance. And humanity, having proven their strength and resolve, stood victorious. The victory was bitter. Humanity had won the war, yes, but at a steep price. The galaxy, once a chaotic, fractured network of species and empires, was now forever changed. The Vraxian Empire, the most powerful force in the known universe, had fallen. But the cost of that victory had left deep scars, not only on the battlefield, but on the souls of the victors as well. General Lawson stood before a massive war table aboard the flagship, the Solace, gazing at the scattered pieces of what was once the Vraxian Empire. The map of the galaxy was dotted with small human colonies, now the new center of power. But there was no time for celebration. The work of rebuilding and securing their place in the galaxy had just begun. "I'm not sure we're ready for what comes next," said Commander Ilara, Lawson's trusted second-in-command. "We've won, but there are still others watching us. Others who may want to test if humanity truly has the strength to rule the galaxy." Lawson nodded. He had been thinking the same thing. The Vraxians might have been their greatest threat, but humanity had made enemies along the way. And now that the Vraxians were out of the picture, those enemies would be even more dangerous. The galaxy, once controlled by the Vraxians, was now open for the taking. Every faction, from the Zinthar to the Erethians, would want a piece of the pie. "We can't let our guard down," Lawson said firmly. "We may have destroyed the Vraxian fleet, but the galaxy is still full of danger. We need to make sure our enemies know one thing. Humanity is not to be underestimated." Far away, on the ruins of Vraxia Prime, Empress Tullia's voice was barely a whisper, but it was full of venom. "We thought we had them. We thought humanity would be nothing more than a nuisance, and yet they've crushed us." She stared out from the wreckage of her once glorious throne room, the city now in ruins. The Vraxians were not easily defeated. Even with their empire shattered, they were resilient. They would rebuild, and they would seek revenge. That was a certainty. "We will rise again," she swore. "The galaxy will regret underestimating us." Back in the heart of human space, Lawson and his commanders made preparations. Despite the victory, humanity had enemies on all sides. Not just the Vraxians, but countless other species with long histories of hostility toward humanity. The war was over, but peace was far from secure. A new kind of war had begun, a war for control, and humanity, having learned from their battles, was ready for it. As the human fleets began to fortify their new borders and expand their influence, there was an air of uneasy anticipation. Could humanity maintain its new dominance in the galaxy, or would the rise of new threats push them back into obscurity? In the shadow of the Vraxian defeat, new powers began to form. The galaxy was not a place where power was simply handed out. It was earned with blood, sweat, and sacrifice. The true test of humanity's resilience was yet to come. But for now, General Lawson stood tall, knowing one thing: Vraxia Prime had fallen, and humanity had secured its place in the galaxy. The struggle to maintain that place, however, would be a challenge like no other. As the Solace sailed through the stars, the galaxy waited. The tides of power were shifting, and no one, not even humanity, knew what would come next. The war may have ended, but the true battle for the future of the galaxy had only just begun. In the wake of the war, the universe slowly began to shift. The Vraxian Empire had been crushed, but that was just the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history. Humanity, once considered an insignificant species, had now proven its strength, and the galaxy would never be the same. General Lawson stood on the balcony of the Solace, gazing out at the stars. The lights of Earth blinked in the distance, a reminder of where it all began. The war had been brutal, and many had died, but humanity had endured. And now, the galaxy's new rulers were preparing to stake their claim. "Do you think we can truly keep this peace?" Commander Ilara asked, joining Lawson at the balcony. Lawson took a deep breath, his eyes focused on the horizon. "Peace, it's a fragile thing, Ilara. I've seen it crumble time and time again. But we've earned this moment. We've proven we can fight, and that gives us something no one else has: control." The tension in the galaxy was palpable. While humanity had risen to power, the enemies they had made during the war were still out there. The Zinthar, the Erethians, and countless other factions watched cautiously. They were waiting for humanity to make a mistake, to show weakness. But Lawson was ready. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were a force to be reckoned with, and everyone would know it. The Vraxian defeat was just the beginning of a new era, one in which humanity's power would be unquestioned. "There will be challenges ahead," Lawson continued, "but we'll face them head-on. We've faced worse, and we've won. That's our strength, and that's what will keep us at the top." But even as humanity celebrated its victory, there was something else in the air. A new, more dangerous threat was rising. It had been subtle at first, hidden in the shadows of galactic politics, but it was gaining momentum. A new faction, unknown to humanity, was stirring in the deep reaches of space. They had been watching humanity's rise, and they had their own plans for the future. Lawson's thoughts were interrupted by a signal flashing across his console. A transmission, encrypted and urgent. He quickly opened it, and his eyes narrowed as he read the message. The galaxy is in chaos. Humanity's reign is already being challenged. They've come. The message was from an old ally, someone who had helped humanity during the war. But now, it seemed there was something far darker lurking in the galaxy, something that even Lawson and his team weren't prepared for. As the transmission ended, Lawson turned to Ilara, his expression grim. "We've been through a lot," Lawson said, "but I have a feeling the worst is yet to come." The stars outside seemed to pulse, a reminder that in the vastness of space, peace was never guaranteed. The galaxy was a place of constant flux, where alliances were formed and shattered, where new powers rose and fell. And now, humanity had made its mark, but other forces were beginning to stir, forces far older and more dangerous than anything they had faced before. "We need to be ready," Lawson added, "for whatever comes next." And as the Solace cruised through the galaxy, humanity's enemies began to regroup. They knew what humanity had accomplished, and they would stop at nothing to challenge it. In the quiet moments of victory, Lawson knew one thing. Peace was a fleeting dream. The battle for the galaxy was far from over, and humanity would need all its strength to hold its ground. As the Solace sailed into the stars, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The dawn of a new era had arrived, but the questions remained. Would humanity maintain its power, or would the forces of darkness rise again, threatening to undo everything they had fought for? The war may have ended, but the true struggle for control of the galaxy was only just beginning.